Hello and welcome to this new episode of the Sovereign Goddess podcast. Authentic conversations with modern medicine women and goddesspreneurs alike, inspiring you to build your queendom with grace. I'm your host, Sabrina Riccio, and I am beyond thrilled to be here with you on this episode. Before I go any further, I just want to say, vision board dreams come true. When I got the email from Ruby Warrington that she wanted to be on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, manifestation, yes. So when I was doing Marie Forleo's B School, it was talking about like, who are the people that you want to work with in certain spans of time? And Ruby was on my list. And then to be able to get her email, I was just like, oh my God, thank you, universe. It's all happening. So I'm beyond thrilled about this episode, and it may be my favorite episode to date. And we talked about everything in this episode, and it's just so juicy. But before I go any further, I just want to check in with you and see how you've been feeling with this Mercury retrograde. For me, I am a double Mercury, right? My sun and my moon are both ruled by the planet Mercury of communication, so the fact that this Mercury retrograde started on a Gemini full moon and I'm a Gemini, it just was, it's been so divinely perfect. I've been really grateful for this Mercury retrograde so far. And it's been also really challenging because, living in California and seeing all of these fires that are happening, my heart is just breaking for all the people who have lost all of their belongings and for all the wildlife that are freaking out and don't know what to do or, are losing their lives. The whole state's been on fire this month, so I should say this year, and because Northern California was about in early fall. So if you can just take a little moment of prayer for California, for the winds to die down and for the water to really come through. It's been tough for sure. Energetically, you can feel it. And it's, I just also feel like it's Kali Ma just really like purging and releasing all of what no longer serves. And so that we can go into this new year, this emergence, right? This metamorphosis. I've been talking about this all summer. This metamorphosis of like us really being who we are meant to be. And that's why I really love this episode, because Ruby is one of the realest people I've ever had a conversation with and I've ever met. And I'm just so grateful for her existence on this planet and the work that she's doing with the Numinous and with my girl, Alexandra Roxo, for Moon Club. Alexandra's on episode 8 of the Sovereign Goddess podcast, so I highly suggest you check it out. But Moon Club just celebrated their 1-year anniversary, and I remember talking to Alexandra a year ago about when she was starting Moon Club, so it's been super awesome to see how that's been really showing up. But if you don't know Ruby, she's a really rad British journalist, and she's now the author of Material Girl Mystical World, but you may know her more so for the Numinous, and I love this site. It's just a beautiful cosmic lifestyle platform that's really like helping bring the mystical world to the mainstream. And that's what we need right now, is we're jumping into this golden era. I've been talking about this golden era through my e-course, Stay Woke, which is $88 until January 1st. And then it's going to go up to $143. So this e-course is a guide to thrive in the golden era. And it's just all about like radical forgiveness and cultivating sacred space and ritual and really owning your own power and showing up. And I think Ruby does that so well. And she works with brands on a consultancy basis, and she writes for a lot of publications, and her stuff has been featured all over the world. And what I also love about her is that she's very open about her sobriety, but she's like, I don't really call it sobriety because sometimes I'll partake in alcohol as a ceremony or for a celebration. And I love that. I feel like, especially as a yoga teacher, for me, I'm always faced up against people being like, oh, you have to be 100% sober. And that may be the path for some people. But for some people, they really love ceremony and they really appreciate these sacred plants and the medicines that they do offer. It's just that over the years through our culture, there's been abuse, right? But a lot of these are medicines that can really help. And so we talked a lot about that in this episode. And she has these Sober Curious events, though, and it's called Club Soda. And she does like these like sober rave kind of environment parties, and super rad. I mean, you've heard from episodes before, and even on this episode, like I've done Burning Man 100% sober. I've been doing festivals sober. So I just really appreciate that there's other like rad women that are honoring that and really doing something to really help people who don't want to get fucked up all the time to have a place where they can still have fun and live life. And so I just really appreciate her for doing that Club Soda. But we came here to really talk a lot about Material Girl Mystical World too. And it's such a great book that's just really helping women find their authentic voice. And obviously, you know, that's like my mantra, be real, be authentic, and vulnerability is sexy. So I just really appreciate the work that she's doing. And so in this episode, we talked about everything, right? We talked about her bitch slap from the universe, and we talked about facing our fears to really become our most authentic self, and what it takes to really leave behind the career that isn't really serving anymore. Because a lot of people who are really tapping in and waking up, they're realizing like, whoa, this work isn't actually in alignment with me anymore. And a lot of people are afraid to leave because they're comfortable. But Ruby talked about her journey, and I love that. And we also talked about like really the importance of cultivating self-care, because as you wake up, you know, you become more increasingly sensitive. So how you can really honor that, and what are some things that you need to do to really respect yourself and your boundaries. So we talked about boundaries, and we also talked about menstrual cycles, and we talked about current events and what's happening, and you know how people are really living in the moment right now, and meditation and feminine leadership, community building. We talked about all of it. It was just, this is, like I said, this is one of my favorite episodes. Like I felt like I could have talked to Ruby forever, but respecting her time, and you know, we had to say au revoir every once in a while. But I'm really excited for you to check out this episode. And what's super awesome too is that she's doing a retreat at Capallo, New Year, New You, and it's from January 1st to the 5th in New York, or on the East Coast, I should say. And I really feel if you're on the East Coast, I would say go. And if you are someone who loves spontaneous trips, I have done many retreats. Ask Sahara Rose. I remember I booked my ticket to go to Costa Rica for her retreat on Saturday or Sunday, and I was in Costa Rica on Thursday. So I'm living proof and living example that I've been one of those people that just feel the hunch last minute to book a plane ticket and go. So if you're feeling like you need that and you want to really go into the new year feeling super solid and like really clear, I would say you definitely should go to Capallo for New Year, New You. And so again, that's January 1st to the 5th, and there's all the goodness, all the teachers. And so here we are. Now we're in this episode, and there's only a few left of this year. And I'm just super stoked to share this episode with you. And I'm really excited to hear what you thought. If you love this episode, you can send us a message either on YouTube. That's the thing. All these podcasts are now on YouTube. So now you can actually watch a lot of the podcasts with the person that I'm interviewing. So you can like join the party. So I'd love your comments either on YouTube. All of the sound audio portion of this podcast is all on SoundCloud. So you can even leave reviews on SoundCloud. But if you really love us, if you can leave a review on iTunes so that more people can find these episodes and this podcast. And, you know, we're here for you. And we just really are doing our best to support you and see this collective consciousness really elevate and thrive in this golden era, or as Ruby calls it, the now age, right? This new age is now the now age. And it's the time is now to really be who you are, live in the moment, and show up as your rad, authentic self. So without further ado, I introduce you to chapter 26 of the Sovereign Goddess podcast, Cultivating Conscious Community, a Material Girl Mystical World with Ribby Warrington. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to an exciting episode of the Sovereign Goddess podcast. Authentic conversations with modern medicine women and goddesspreneurs alike, inspiring you to build your queendom with grace. Oh my gosh, this is like so good. So this is like vision dreams, like vision board dreams coming true with, I'm so honored to have Ribby Warrington of the Numinous here. And we are talking about all things Material Girl, Mystical World, her new book.
Yeah, you got her there. Amazing.
Oh, I got like, there's like Post-it notes. I'm like, yeah, she's on to something.
That's my favorite site, because I put so much research into that book. Like not only interviews and books I was reading, but just like experiences I was having and revelations and all of it. And so when I see that, I'm like, yes, people are hearing what's in there, that's coming through. The transmission is working. Yes.
It's like Gonzo Journalism, like to the next level.
Yeah. Good point.
So if you don't know what Gonzo Journalism is, it's like really immersing yourself in the situation and like really being part of the experience to be able to share. And, you have the Numinous, which is just incredible. And, you have your background with journalism in the fashion industry. So there's that thing that was so funny because there was one thing that came to me so strong in your book, and you're talking about your fear of public speaking.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, now she's like on podcasts and doing all these interviews, and she's having to face this like massive fear where she can't be hiding behind a screen and typing. Like she has to come up and like be her fullest authentic expressions. So how has that been? Like just to start in, like, how has it been?
Thank you so much for recognizing that and even starting this conversation that way, because it's a huge fear. And I almost felt like when I was writing about it, that who doesn't have a fear of public speaking? It's the thing that everybody says. But like, honestly, it has been so petrifying for me. And I was thinking about it just the other day, because it's things like this, which are kind of less fearful, but then it's like hosting bigger events, or, speaking, doing talks, or even doing book readings to kind of bigger groups and things. It's like really a thing. And it used to be that it would be in my mind and it would be on repeat for kind of like weeks beforehand. And then afterwards, I'd still feel really kind of like over adrenalized, and my nervous system would just be like firing all over the place. And that would last for a couple of days. And so it was kind of like just this constant sense of this feeling of just discomfort. And I realized the other day that hasn't necessarily gone away, but I've got comfortable with it. And something I often talk about when I'm talking about our growth and our evolution and really kind of like pushing our limits and stepping up beyond our fears is this idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I realized I've kind of like got to that point with the public speaking. Like it's no longer paralyzing to me. It's no longer so fearful. It's deeply uncomfortable still, but it's like there's like no separation between me just like feeling the fear and doing it anyway, basically.
I'm proud of you.
It's been yeah, thank you for recognizing it. That has been the biggest challenge, in fact, of this whole year, and but I also can now really, really witness and appreciate the value in being pushed into that situation. It's a bit like a kid being pushed into a pool and just told to swim,
Yeah. And then from that experience, like the things that we're most fearful of, like those are usually the places of like the deep nuggets and like the medicines, like, the heroine's journey of like, I was able to like slay this dragon of like speaking up. And now it's like, I can't shut up.
Well, the thing is, I have actually come to really love doing podcasts. I do love this format, it feels super real and it feels very rich to me. And because I love actually one-on-one conversations. I think that's one of the reasons I love journalism, because I love doing interviews with people myself,
Yeah.
I love that kind of just that having that excuse to like get super deep with someone one-on-one.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because there's so many parallels with your life and my life. Like I wasn't in the fashion industry, but I was a music blogger. So I was like going to all the raves and interviewing all the DJs and like talking all about that. But then that wasn't really fulfilling me anymore. And I know that's what you really talk about a lot. in the book on how like you had to leave the fashion world of all the glitz and glam and the freebies and all these things. And then it was like your soul was really yearning for something more enriching and something deeper. So how was that, taking the plunge to, you know, listen to your intuition and to be like, okay, like this is time for me to evolve my spirit and my soul and to do something that's a little more rewarding?
I guess I did it in a very sort of like, I was very, looking back, and it wasn't intended this way, I did it in a way that was actually very kind on my nervous system. Like I really took it one step at a time. It's only, so I've been working on the Numinous kind of behind the scenes for a bit before actually launching it in 2013 up to now. So probably about 5.5 years or so. And actually only really this year that I've fully really closed the door on the kind of journalism world. And that's essentially, that's the career that's been supporting me while I've been building this soul project. So it's like, it's been a slow process of kind of like separation, I suppose, from all of those things. And I'm still not 100% separated from it. Like, but I'm much more able to see now what value I can get from that world, and and the ways in which
it's like
it
a
doesn't
remix,
serve me.
right? It's like a
Yeah,
remix
it's like
on
a
how
remix.
you're able
Exactly.
to like intertwine and like infuse your own kind of thing. Because, you know, even like in the book, you're talking about the things like, because I have so many people ask me about Dharma, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the things that really light us up when we're younger are the things that are very much in align with how we are here to serve and do our purpose. And so, you know, there's things that are still components of it that people forget. Like they're like, oh my God, I completely abandoned it, but there's still components of it in the next phase that come through.
I mean, like I said, you know, I always have loved interviewing people, and I see a big part of my Dharma is storytelling, right? And story medicine. And so the sharing of people's stories has always been a thread running throughout my career. That I really got so much from in the journalism career. Just it wasn't enough because it wasn't attached to or aligned with any kind of like a bigger purpose or a sense of anything that felt particularly meaningful to me. You know, the stories I was sharing weren't necessarily meaningful to me on a deeper level. So that's been the missing piece. But in terms of like following my intuition into creating a project of my own and following the path into the Numiverse, as I say, it really kind of got to a point where I ignored it for long enough that it was really bashing me over the head in quite a painful way. You know, I was...
I know.
Self-medicating / abusing lots of substances to kind of like try and shut the voice down. And that went on for a while and was obviously quite damaging to my overall well-being. And then, just ignored it for way longer than was really respectful, let's say.
Yeah, and then you know the universe will like slap you. It's like a bitch slap.
Yeah,
like, you know?
My bitch slap came along in such a like glamorous kind of like diamante studded glove, because it was like, hey, bitch, we're moving you to New York. We're going to pluck you out of this nice, comfortable situation you've got going on here in London that you think is so fabulous but isn't, and we're going to move you to New York. So it looked all like, oh, even more excitement and glamour. Great. But then actually the move, and it's so interesting, I've only really looked at it this way recently, but that move was actually very traumatic, which sounds ridiculous on the surface because it's like, wow, how cool. But at the same time, it was like I left behind the job that had given me my entire sense of identity, all my family and friends. It was like being plunged into... I mean, New York's an intense... I don't know if you've ever spent much time here.
My family are New Yorkers, so like, I've got the New York like swag, right. But like the California like chill.
Yeah, very cool. Well, it's a very expensive city, as you know, and it's kind of just all of it was like, wow, this is actually so intense.
It's high energy all the time too, and you have to navigate through a lot. And I'm sure like during this work, like you've become more increasingly sensitive.
Yes, definitely. And I'm so thankful for that. But at the same time, that involves so much TLC of the self, really, you know. And I think that that's one of the reasons why self-care is such a kind of buzzword. It's because so many more people are really sensitizing to our energy, where it's leaked, how it's stolen, all of these things, and are really sensitizing to the idea that we need to, for for our well-being and our sanity.
As literally. I have my piece of black tourmaline and smoky quartz in my hand.
Yeah, right. As I have my little bit of raw chocolate here for energy in the afternoon.
These things, these, you know, are tools. These are part of our spiritual toolkits to really show up and do the work.
Exactly. That's exactly how I always put it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because, you know, I know you have like club soda too, and you're doing a lot of more like conscious partying and like being aware of that. And I know like I'm seeing that transition in my life too. Like last year, Burning Man, I did it 100% sober. I almost did no sugar. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was like 10 days. I set up camp too. So it was like 10 days it was the most empowering, like 10 days of my life. Absolutely. And so even now, like, you know, I'm doing these like alchemy sessions where I'm teaching Kundalini yoga, and I have my DJ duo, Feather and Dot, like doing like electronic mantra music, and we're doing like ecstatic dance and stuff like that. So it's
so
like
good.
Yeah, and it feels so great. Like it feels good, you know. And to be able, I'm really appreciating like the amount of boundaries. You know, you talk about these boundaries and like the self-care in the book, and sometimes you have to like not even walk away, but just like move yourself from situations or from friends that, you know, as you are super sensitive, you need to be able to tune in and acknowledge what the intuition is telling you to like, you know, be more conscious about like the actions you're doing or what you're partaking in.
What you're taking in, that's exactly it. When I think about like toxicity, I think about substances that I might be consuming. I think the toxins that are just generally in the environment, but I equally think about toxic thoughts, toxic conversations, toxic relationships. Like all of that has an impact on my energy, the container that I am consciously creating in order to come out into the world and do the work that I really feel called to do. So yeah, it goes across the board. And I love the fact that you're doing that with the conscious partying. So this summer on the 2 eclipses in August, both of the Leo eclipses, couldn't be more perfectly timed. I basically found myself hosting like sober raves on both of them. And for me still, that was kind of like the final frontier in a way of my sobriety. And it's weird. I feel funny using the word sobriety because I'm not like sober, but I just don't, I consciously choose not to use that substance anymore.
You appreciate it, or you see it as like a ceremony or as like something to like pay reverence to, rather than feeling like you needed to fill in a void.
Yes. And never using it in an unconscious just because everybody else is.
I'm on that
it's
same
Friday
page.
Night way. It's kind of like in a ceremonial, with ceremonial reverence for the extremely potent psychoactive substance that alcohol is. I may occasionally choose it as an appropriate substance, right? But one of those occasions I had reserved it for was just kind of like dancing with wild abandon, and knowing that the freedom that afforded my body and the way that could move energy around my body was so pleasurable and so important to me that it was a useful substance. But on both these situations on the eclipse, I found myself dancing more wildly, more free, more euphorically than I ever had done. And it was the first time I'd ever done that without any alcohol. And it was just like so liberating. Oh my God, it was amazing.
That's
so I'm
so
really
awesome.
And there's someone I work with here in the city called Amy Kynock, who does something called Kundalini Disco, which sounds kind of similar to what you're doing. So yeah, it's great because you kind of like, you get the Kundalini buzz, and that's what gets you into the music and like what kicks it off. And from there you just go.
Yeah, because I know like with my experience, I taught at Oregon Eclipse Gathering. So it was like a huge festival that like 13 festivals from around the world came together to produce this event to see the eclipse. And so that's where we brought the alchemy sessions the first day of the festival. So it was all about like, what is your intention for the eclipse? What is your intention for the festival? Communion, like coming together, like creating a ceremony with it to be in this now age of like collaboration and seeing one another, and also just being in that space. And I had people all week through the festival, and even after, saying how it was one of the most profound experiences that they had. Wow. And then what was really powerful, and I loved that I wanted to talk about this like the feminist movement.
Yes.
And in the book, like I love how you are really helping heal the taboo around our periods.
Yes.
And it was really fascinating. Like all of my girlfriends that were there, we all started our moons either the first day of the festival or as soon as the eclipse hit.
That is amazing.
These are women who, you know, who had like birth control and all of the issues, like having their periods, and they didn't have them for 4 months. And then as soon as the eclipse hit, boom, like here she comes.
That's given me goosebumps. I'm like, that's so powerful. The fact that you all that experience that together, that's amazing.
I have goosebumps thinking about it.
I love a good period story.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about, you know, we've talked about this self-care and even the boundaries, like those are all like very strong energies of the divine feminine revolution that's really coming back up, you know, of like saying no, thank you, and being okay, and honoring our sacredness and our space, and really seeing our body and our energetic field as sacred temples.
Yes.
So I just want to talk about, like, you know, how you're seeing, especially with so much that's going on right now. It's, you know, sometimes, especially as women who are more in touch with their emotions, and, you know, we feel more like, how are you seeing women come together to really support and to really inspire and to be the activist and really stand up and, you know, bring in this like Mother Earth nurturing energy?
Well, I think, I mean, you know about Moon Club, which is the online community that Alexandra Roxo and I have created together.
Who was also on the Sovereign Goddess podcast.
Who's so fabulous. So, I mean, our intention with that was really to create a community for people who wanted to investigate spiritual, esoteric, witchy, healing practices, and find community to do that with and support each other within that, who might not necessarily have access to it otherwise. And I think, you know, we were very aware that in living in cities like New York and LA, there's all these workshops, there's all these healers, there's people coming out of the spiritual closet, like left, right, and center, and it's quite easy to find community to kind of like investigate that part of life with you. Whereas not so much the case if you're living in a small town in like Ohio, or, you know. So we wanted to create something where people could actually find community. And I think community building is one of the key things that I'm really seeing as people just really consider long-term, what can I do? I think there's been the initial kind of like angry and afraid reaction to some of the things we've been seeing go down. But then it's kind of like, okay, well, stepping back from that, which has been a necessary sort of like purging of some very strong emotions that it's brought up. But long term, and putting a boundary up, exactly, and really kind of like a strong no. But I think beyond that, long term, a lot of it's going to be about community and finding support so that we can feel really strong and empowered, and we can see ourselves see our strongest, most powerful selves reflected in the community and the company that we keep. So I think community building is a really, really big one, whether that's through people actually setting up centers or forming groups online or offline, and more kind of like moon circles, women's circles kind of forming, and just hearing about this stuff all the time, and people feeling, I think there's nothing more actually empowering than knowing that you're supported by a group of people who are on the same mission as you. So I think that's one of the main ones.
It's a space for you to feel like you're not alone. And I think with so much of what's
happening
right now, there's so many triggers that are happening for people right now. It's like, this is like deep root chakra healing. This is like opening the heart. Like I had a girl on Sina Shakti who was on my podcast, and she was talking about cacao and how the Mayan prophecy was that cacao would have its revival when the people needed to open their hearts again.
Wow.
You know, and that's what's happening.
That's the thing. There's so much happening in the world now that could keep us so fearful. And the challenge daily almost is to choose not to succumb to the fear and close down as a result of that.
Or numb,
of course, exactly. Substances, or I also feel like a big numbing tool that's kind of out of control at the moment is just overconsumption of information. Be that like social media, be that news headlines. Like you can numb out for a couple of hours and keep yourself more in fear, actually, just reading more and more headlines about what's going on. Or you can choose to see what's actually in your reality in front of you right now, feel into the love that's in your life, and take your actions and make your choices from that place, like whatever they may be, you know. So I think that's a really big challenge, like you say, just kind of like keeping open-hearted and keeping joyful. Like I was speaking to Alexandra about it yesterday. I mean, what a week to be having this conversation. But
Of
there
course.
are some, yeah, of course.
Because we've tried to have this interview 3 times. And
I know, and it's today that Pluto goes direct.
Of course.
And there's like,
well, we tried to schedule during a Mercury retrograde. Like it was just.
I know. Here we are. But anyway, I think both of us were just kind of remarking or feeling the awe, really, of the fact that the current events we're experiencing are actually making everybody really live in the moment. Because it's actually, it's really bringing people into the present moment. And when you're really in the present moment, life can be so beautiful, you know, if you're just looking at what you're seeing in front of you, you know,
and it forces you to slow down. And,
it forces you to slow down and connect to people. Yeah.
Because especially today's day and age, we're so like adrenal failure and like the nervous system and just like everything is just so overworked because we're you know, like if we're seeing like war or whatever on a TV screen, even if it's just a commercial for a movie, like our brains don't know the difference.
Yes, exactly.
So it's, you know, that's part of like the boundary that we need to be aware of what we're consuming.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yes, I have this like patience app on my phone, and it shows ads because I have the free one, and it's annoying because I want to just pay for it, but I can't find the paid one anyway. One of the ads is for this like war game called, I can't even remember what it's called. I'm not going to voice it anyway. And I've actually complained to the company. I'm like, I do not approve of you playing this ad. It's total fear mongering. It's warmongering.
Yeah.
But of course they want me to pay for their paid app. So they would probably, I was thinking about it. They don't, yeah. But no, it's even things like that. I'm hyper aware of it, of when that comes onto the screen of my phone, just like putting it away, choosing not to consume the fear, the message, the propaganda in that little clip for this game, which is like, the enemy are coming, build a wall. Like it's just insane. It's insane. Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like more than ever, it's like I'm always having crystals on me or like clearing the space. Like I just had this woman who she works next door to my family's restaurant, and she just gifted me a whole huge bag of white sage that she harvested herself from her family's native, like she lives on the reservoir.
Wow.
And so she lives on the reservation. It's like straight. So I'm like letting it dry out right now. Like such a blessing.
That is so awesome. I found myself on the second eclipse rave that I was hosting was on an island in Croatia called Obanjan. And it's this amazing, you would love it, I think. It's like a summit, like an 8-week-long music and wellness kind of festival. That's like a resort. And people just go for like their week's vacation or whatever. But they have talks and workshops the whole time and DJs and yoga and meditation and all kinds. And I was doing some Numinous stuff there. And I found out from the guys that run it that it's actually, so first of all, the island is on a bed of calcite, like naturally growing, just kind of in the sea, beautiful. We all came back with like chunks. And then there was just like wild sage growing everywhere. Amazing. So we were just picking so much of it, drying it out. Yeah, beautiful. Yes, exactly. I mean, for me, it's more like I really doubled down on my meditation practice, just in the name of really calming my nervous system and being able to really, really, really get super attuned to like the quality of my thinking, the quality of my thoughts, like in any given moment, and to really be able to act fast when I can see that they're going in a certain direction and bring myself back. And literally for me, meditation is that. It's the practice of bringing my own energy back to my focus point of attention, containing it, bringing it back inside me so that I feel fully charged and able to really, you know, cope with whatever is going to
because we have to be our fullest expressions right now. Like this is what we've been waiting for as light workers. And I've been working on stepping out of the term warrior because then it implies more war.
Yeah, I also don't like the term resistance because
I hate the term resistance.
Gives so much power to.
I know.
I'm not. If I say I'm resisting this thing, it's acknowledging
whatever
that
you
this thing
resist
is even
persists.
there.
Whatever you resist persists.
So I really don't like that term, and I'm
either.
Some people would say, "Oh, you're putting your head in the sand." I'm like, no, I'm facing towards the future that I believe is the truth and that I am actively involved in creating.
You have to focus more on what you do want rather than what you don't want. We have to focus on the solutions and not like go round and round in circles by like, oh yeah, no, for sure. I got triggered from that a couple weeks ago, and I like literally jumped on my Instagram live and I was like, okay, resist needs to stop.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, and I just like the quote that like Mother Teresa's been coming so strong for me lately. And it's the quote that she said, how I will never attend an anti-war rally, but I will be there for a pro-peace rally. Yes. You know, and it's so just really understanding like what you're protesting or what you're standing up for as an activist or what it may be. Like focus on the solution, not bitching about the problem over and over again, or, you know, giving that the power. I think that's what people need to, that needs to really, that people really need to resonate with.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for spreading that message too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you too, because I felt like I was like the only one. I was like, am I the only one that's seeing this? Like,
but that's been a big part of my, you know, stepping away from alcohol. It's like I've really, as much as possible, focused on all of the reasons I'm choosing not to drink and how great it feels and how much time it gives me and how much more positive I feel about my life, rather than thinking about all the reasons I'm not, you know? So yes, it can be applied to most things.
It's a more gentle approach too, you know, because then you shame yourself and
yeah, exactly.
And we're trying to like, you know, transmute the shame feel and just realize that it's just opportunities for and calls for us to like infuse more love, you know, and it's, I've been actively, you know, partaking in that shift myself, because it's just like, obviously it hasn't been working, like doing the resist movement hasn't been working and things like that. So it's like, okay, let's take a step back, like come from a space of neutrality where we can see each other and then be able to be like, okay, like be that eagle's eye view of like how, like, what is the higher perspective, like the highest perspective.
Exactly. Yes.
So going back to this feminism movement and things like that, you know, and it's like we're in autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. So I want to just talk about like the witch, you know, this term witch, and like offering tools of people, you know, being able to help heal themselves again or to connect with nature. And this just the huge uprising of like women reclaiming their power back.
Totally. I mean, I don't know, like, I remember, so do you know who Kelly Catrone is?
Yes.
So Kelly Catrone was like a really early mentor on the Numinous. And I remember her saying to me that, and I haven't actually been to Salem, but all over Salem there are t-shirts that say witch, woman in total control of herself.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love that.
I love that. And for me, that's all witch is. It's like a woman or person who, you know, has access to all of their superpowers. We all have access to superpowers if we can tune in and believe that, you know, we can all heal ourselves, we can all heal others, we all have an intuitive voice, we are all psychic, like we all know what is the next right path to take if we can just tune in. But the thing is, there's so much noise in the world, and so many targeted messages trying to convince us that that is not the case, that it can be a practice in and of itself, simply learning how to trust and remember that we have all of these superpowers within us.
And it's also important to remember, like when the icky stuff comes up, that's our opportunity to see it as a reflection in our own lives of the areas that we need to be more caring to and, you know, more thoughtful to.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's something Alexandra and I talk about a lot. And in the chapter on the divine feminine, I really talk about how one of the, what I see as one of the biggest tragedies of the suppression of the feminine principle and the fearfulness around kind of female power that has accompanied that or preceded that, is this idea of competition between women and women feeling that being born of kind of like, when we see a woman being in her true power, it triggers some kind of like fear or competition or envy within us, because we believe that that's not enough of that power for all of us to embody it, for all of us to rise. And I just think that's so incredibly sad, but a really important thing for us all to work with and move through. So something else I'm doing in my life is just whenever I feel triggered by another woman, or I feel competitive or jealous, which happens all the time, partly because of social media, and we're human. My practice is really to look at like, okay, what is she embodying that I feel is lacking in me for whatever reason? And how can I remind myself that I have access to that also? And how can I then focus on cultivating more of that in my life, you know, rather than projecting onto this innocent being who's just being fucking fabulous, all of my own feelings of lack, you know, and not enough. And so that's been a really interesting practice to work with this summer.
Yeah. And I think it's like a lot of that grounding of our being and the worthiness, and really feeling like we don't need to hide behind like this veil or, you know, this image of who we're supposed to be. Yeah. And I definitely feel there's a huge revival of the authentic movement. You know, like people are like, the mantra that I use here, it's like, be real, be authentic. And like when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, it's so sexy. Like it's so like attractive, and like people want that, you know. But for so long, like with this, the rise of the patriarchy in the past, like, you know, this past Piscean age, it was just so much of like pushing that down and like doubting that, or just like belittling, like so much belittling. And then we have that stored inside our like cellular membrane.
Exactly. That to be successful, attractive, desirable must look like this, basically, whatever that means, you know, on whatever level. I just interviewed Amanda de Cadenet about her new book. It's called It's Messy. And I love it. I love the title of that book because I'm like, yeah, it really is.
It's
and we're
so
actually
messy.
we're seeing that mess like full self. It's out for everyone to see now. The messiness of life is all out there. Like literally no one knows what the fuck they're doing. So now is the time to really tune in to exactly what you said, that authentic sense of self, which is where our intuition lies as well.
And it comes from the
lies.
self-love. It comes from the self-love first, you know, like when you start to love yourself, you're just like, fuck what everyone else says. Like,
so
I love me. Yeah. It's like moksha.
So
it is the definition of moksha. It's just like whole, like, this is who I am. And I think people are like realizing too, like you can't please everyone. And that's okay. But like we talked about earlier, like there is this very strong cultivation of tribe that is really coming up right now. And I feel like, you know, there's no accident that, you know, the rise of the now age and the rise of like all of the mysticism and all these things are happening, because this is, you know, we came on this earth to heal. Like we came to heal the parts of the facets of our soul that, you know, need a little more love.
That have been in some way persecuted. Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you about, okay, so you're doing the book, you've got the Numinous. Can you also just explain what the Numinous is? Like Numinous, what is the word?
So the word numinous, the first definition I ever heard, and it's the one I stick with, it means that which is unknown or unknowable. And when relating that to our experience, up to our lives, I use it to describe anything that comes within the realm of human experience that we can't necessarily put into words. We don't necessarily have the language to describe. So that could be a feeling, an experience, just a sense and knowing. It's those parts of life that are just, there are no words, like it's indefinable. And yet it's super real. It's supernatural. The supernatural, you know?
Totally.
Is numinous. I just love the words. I mean, I'm such a wordsmith. I've been a writer my entire career, but life, you know, I've just always been so in love with words. And that word, as soon as I heard it, I saw it on the cover of a magazine. So the Numinous began life as a blog, as a website, an online magazine, I guess, that covered all things New Age, but updated for what I call the Now Age, which is now the age of Aquarius.
I call it the golden era.
I love it.
It's this time of like us to shine like who we are and to like our brilliance.
To be in the now, to really like be without the conditioning of past, without the fear of the future, to be in the now and to act from that place. It's what it is, you know? So yeah, the Numinous has expanded over the years into events. There's obviously the book now. Started hosting retreats. Moon Club is the kind of like the membership part of it, the community part of it. So yeah, it's multifaceted.
Yeah. And another thing that I just really wanted to talk about too, because we are talking about this being, you've birthed this, and I really appreciate your vulnerability about, the whole idea of motherhood, because I have a lot of my girlfriends that, are choosing not to be mothers. Like they're like, it's just never been drawn to it. Like I have like, I'll be looking forward to my nieces and nephews or, and I have like other projects. So I just want to say thank you because I know there's a lot of, that's been part of the things that we're healing too with the feminist movement is not having this like cookie cutter look of what it is to be a woman, and
what it is to create, what it is to be a creator, literally a goddess. What is a god or a goddess but a creator of life, right? And I think that there's been obviously motherhood is a profound and beautiful experience, and none of us would be here, none of this would even exist without motherhood, of course. But at the same time, I believe that part of the suppression of the feminine principle has been this idea that the only way a woman can truly create or create anything of value in the world is to create children, is to create new life, when actually there are so many ways that we can express our creative energy, our Shakti in the world, and give birth to all kinds of things, So I was really, I still I tear up every time I read that chapter because it's, I think, so profound, and it's been a huge, for me, I even talk about in that, the number of times I've had editors ask me to write about this like strange phenomenon of not wanting to have a child, and the kind of the societal pressure that's put on us as women to follow that path, and how strange or weird we're often made to feel when we don't, or we express that we don't want to have children. I've done
or
so
you
much
can't, or if you
or
can't.
You can't. Exactly.
Yeah, there's so much of that going on right now.
That you're somehow a failure, that you're somehow cold and unfeeling, that you're selfish, like all of this stuff. And it's like, in a weird way, it hasn't been hard because my intuition and my deep knowing has always been that wasn't my path. And so, I'm happy to be able to be a voice for that path, So thanks for acknowledging it. And it's interesting to hear you say, I do think that, for younger generations and even future generations, it won't be so much of a charged subject, but still, it's still by far the norm. I was actually having a conversation with my friend Kate yesterday, because one of the big fears is kind of like that thing about, but what about when I'm really old and my partner's passed away and I'm just on my own and there's no one to look after me? That thing. But I was speaking to my friend Kate yesterday, and she's like, oh, it's okay. I found the plot of land in New Mexico. We're going to buy a plot. We're going to like pimp it out. We're going to each have our own little house. We'll have a full staff. There'll be doctors and nurses on site. We'll grow all our own vegetables. I'm like, okay, great. And she's like, and the only criteria for membership is you can't have any kids.
That's so funny.
I'm like, count me in.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, even like with the Numinous that you have, and you're super busy and all these things, and like, even though this is your child in a way, and what you're doing, how are you finding the time to connect with nature, and how are you finding the time to really have this balance? Because being in front of the screen all the time with like the EMF waves, and you're traveling and you're speaking and doing all these things, so you're able to like get out of like being in front of the computer 24/7. But I think there's such a strong need and for us to like really connect with nature again, and to like really get back to basics, and even social media detoxes and things like that. We were talking about the nervous system earlier and things like that. Like, what are you doing to help you stay sane as you're promoting this book and running the Numinous and all these retreats and Moon Club? And I'm just like 2 years, proud of you.
The past 2 years, really not. like I really burned myself out really quite badly and had quite a big crash after my book first came out. But then of course the book came out, and that's when you have to be really on. So that was like a really, really challenging time, because I was so burnt out by that point. And I suddenly realized that, like, oh shit, now is when it starts. I thought that all the work leading up to it was the hard part, but it was actually afterwards. And so, yeah, I really haven't, is the honest truth. And it's not, it's something that I've addressed this summer. So I was lucky enough to do, I did a 3.5 week sort of like trip around Europe. So I did a week hosting stuff on this island in Croatia, which was just like, oh, heaven. It's all pine trees. Like I said, it's built on crystals.
I need to go.
Like, oh my God.
Conscious travel.
So there was that. And then I met my brother lives in Berlin. So he and his wife came with my little nephew, Henry, who's 2.5. And we spent a week in Italy with them. And then I was in the UK.
You were in Puglia, right?
I was in Puglia, yes.
That's where my family's from.
Oh, seriously? Very cool. We were near Ostuni.
Oh, so fun.
It's beautiful. So we had a week there. And then I went to the UK. And the place, so I actually grew up in an extremely rural, like wild fields on a river, barefoot kid, like climbing trees kind of childhood. So that was how I grew up. But I was always kind of like fascinated by the city, and I was so excited when we moved to the city, like the glamour of it. And that was the first time I feel like my glamour addiction really kicked in. It was kind of like, this is where the action is. This is where the glamour is. So I've always very much identified as a real city girl, and I can definitely go a long time actually without nature, or so I thought. Because honestly, the way I felt after coming back from this 3 weeks, because I spent some time where I grew up with my mum as well before a few days in London, I felt so refreshed. I was like beaming. I felt so happy. I was so inspired and excited. And I realized as well that I had, over that 3.5 week period, only really spent like an hour or two a day at my computer,
so nice.
Which is not my usual MO, particularly when writing the book. And it made me realize that in the writing process, because that was such a huge weight of computer work on top of running a website, on top of setting up a digital online community, on top of everything else, it was just like I was doing 12-hour days at my desk for like 2 years. And it really made me realize like how undercharged how much I needed to really kind of like make sure that I maintained this going forward. So I've been, of course, this is New York and it's easy to get sucked back into it, but I've been much, much better. It's kind of like, they say it takes 40 days to like break a habit. I kind of feel like having that extended period away from desk and email was enough to make me go, okay, yeah, I don't actually need to be. So it's crept in a little bit, but I'm saving. One cool kind of life hack. I've been doing like my dedicated email hours between like 5 and 7 p.m. because my creative like Shakti brain time is first thing in the morning and during the whole morning. So I'm really keeping that as clear as possible. And I have an assistant now who kind of will text me if there's anything urgent in my inbox. So I don't actually need to look at it until it gets to later in the afternoon. And I can just kind of use the residual energy from the day to kind of quickly do that. But in terms of the nature thing, I've been planning with my husband, we're going to get out of the city this week and find somewhere to hike. Because I'm like, okay, back to my roots. Yes, okay, I do need nature, and I am a total tree hugger, born and bred. Like, there's just no more denying it. In fact, speaking of Joshua trees, hugging those Joshua trees is like, oh my God, it's like plugging into the source direct. It's incredible.
Yeah, I usually, I'm doing like going to the park every day and like hiking or just like being by myself or with my dog. And so there's always a place for you to stay in my house in Joshua Tree.
Thanks. Great. That's okay. Good to know.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just, I'm looking at like people like you that I'm just like, I'm so in awe with how you're doing it all. And, creating these systems and having this like machine kind of like flowing. And I know it wasn't overnight.
It definitely hasn't been overnight, and it has definitely been step by step, totally intuitive, very, very grassroots. I have burnt out a lot. But the difference is where I burnt out in my kind of journalism career before, there was a sense of hopelessness accompanying that. The burnout now is like more just like, oh damn, I'm gonna have to take a break, but I'm so excited to be doing this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh okay, yeah, I need to take a break, but I'm still excited and super passionate, and as soon as I get back into it, I'm like, right, let's go again.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a very different tone to the burnout, but it still happens. And I kind of, you know, I've really, like I said, doubled down on my meditation practice. I go to bed at like 9:30 p.m. I love that. I'm trying that right now. I barely go out in the evenings unless it's kind of like, you know, a real master. That's usually something to do with promoting my book at the moment. So yeah, I'm very strict about my schedule.
Yeah, that's great. That's part of the boundary again, you know, it's just going back to the boundary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Making sure that your cup is full so that it can overflow, because we're holding a lot of space. Like talking about this stuff is not light stuff.
Exactly. Yes, it really isn't. Exactly. When you think about, and I try not to think too often about like how many potential ears it's reaching and like where these conversations go and where my work goes, because that can become overwhelming in and of itself, you know?
Totally.
I think the best thing for me is just to stay super focused in the moment, as we keep saying, and like what's the next most important thing to say and do.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking about in the moment, I have some quick questions in the moment for you.
Yes. Love it.
What is inspiring you at this moment?
Doing loads of podcasts. I'm loving doing podcasts and meeting
fun.
all of you guys. Like it's really, it's been great. So the conversations I'm having with people like yourself are what are inspiring me. Also, not being in my email, not thinking that email equals productivity, and being reminded of how joyful it feels to put space in every day to be creative.
I love that. What is your current mantra?
Oof. I'm not very good with mantras.
Well, what is the thing that you're even telling yourself, you know, like what has been your guidepost to like keep you sane during this like podcast episodes and all these things?
Yeah. Be in the moment and you can be happy, I guess. Be in the moment and be happy. Yeah.
Okay, who would you say are some of your favorite goddesses, either ancient goddesses or modern day goddesses?
I find these kinds of questions so hard because I change my mind on these things all the time.
That's what we're saying right now.
Yeah, okay, so right now, God, I don't know. I mean, Kali comes to mind because I'm just like
my favorite.
Yeah, she's like raging full force right now, right?
Yeah.
And
totally.
as much as I could flip into fear about what we're seeing in terms of all the environmental events, at the same time, I'm like, I am just in awe. I'm in awe of that power. So yeah, that's, I guess she's kind of pretty much always up there.
Cool. What would you say is the one book that really shifted things for you?
Well, when I read Eat, Pray, Love, I think I read it in 2010. It was 2008. What was it? It was around then. It was the first time I really kind of thought that there was room for spirituality in my life, or it might be something I wanted to investigate, I suppose. So I guess that book was, for me, it was a turning point kind of a book. There's a book that I'm talking about a lot at the moment that I'm kind of recommending anywhere and everywhere. It's called Outrageous Openness, by someone called Tosha Silva, and she's an astrologer based out of San Francisco. The subhead is Letting the Divine Take the Lead. And it's so beautifully written, and it's just so simple and funny and sweet, and it's just lots of little stories from her life which are all these reminders of everything is unfolding exactly as it should. And our job is simply to show up with an open heart and to be willing and to be enthusiastic. And it's consistently a reminder to me to be in that state of like, I'm just showing up doing the best I can today, because it's all happening. It's all happening, you know.
Yeah, I think that's been one of my mantras lately. It's all happening.
It's all happening. It just is.
It's all happening.
Yeah.
Okay, what would you tell Ruby Slippers today?
Oh, Ruby Slippers. So for anyone who hasn't read the book, Ruby Slippers was my nickname in my first kind of like fashion magazine job.
I love the story at Burning Man when you were like, I just wish I could just like
click my Ruby Slippers.
That was my first burn too in 2015.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So you, as you know, mine wasn't sober burned at all. What would I tell Ruby Slippers? I would tell her she's doing a really good job, you know? Yeah. Like, I think, I don't know. It's a hard question, that kind of like, what advice would you give the older self? But like, I'm grateful for every step of my path. Like, there are no regrets. I truly believe that everything I've experienced, I needed to experience to bring me to where I am. So I think I would just say to her, yeah, good job. Just enjoy it, you know? Enjoy it.
I love that. And where do you see the Numinous taking off? Like, I mean, it already has, but like, where do you see as the evolution of the Numinous? And
well, I definitely want to do more large scale live events, retreats, definitely retreats, but also kind of like experiences, you know, big community experiences. There's a lot of joy to be had, and I feel like the connection and the communities that get built out of those kind of experiences are really fab. And in fact, I would love for you to share with your following. Alexandra and I are going to be taking over Kripalu, the yoga retreat center in Massachusetts, for the first week of January. For a retreat from January 1st to the 5th called New Year, New You. And it's going to be myself, Alexandra, Betsy LaFay, who's the psychic medium who's featured in the book, Lindsay Mack, who's my resident tarot person, and Sada Simone, who's an incredible meditation guide and happiness coach. So we're going to be doing a whole series of workshops over that whole week. And I'm just like, I can't think of a better way to kick off 2018.
Beautiful.
So those kinds of experiences, more of that sort of work, I think. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And more books.
And more books. That's gonna be like, there better be another book, because I read this book in one sitting. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just so good. I mean, like I said, it just felt like it was like so many parallels with my own life that I was
that's so cool.
It just resonated so well. So I'm super grateful for this book and for you taking the time to do that. But okay, so where could we find more of you and the Numinous and Material Girl Mystical World?
Well, the Numinous is the website is the-numinous.com. It's updated most days, and we post about all the stuff that's on there on our Facebook page, which is the Numinous Magazine, and on Instagram, which is _Numinous. So those are the main social channels that I use. The book is sold everywhere. I like to direct people to a website called Indie Bound, which will help you buy it from your local indie bookstore.
Love that.
Yes, indeed. And yeah, keep following on social for news of updates of kind of like live experiences and events as well. So the Kripalu one, the January one, is the big one at the moment.
That's so fun.
Yeah,
I have to make the trip out to New York. Oh my God.
Bring your moon crew.
Oh, we be coming. We come. Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome. Okay. And if there's one little piece of advice that you would like to share with everyone that's listening that has really helped you thrive as you've built this queendom, what would you say?
It's kind of an old one, but like there's no perfection is a non-concept. There's no such thing as perfect. So do not wait for the conditions to be perfect before you do what you need to do in the world. You start doing it, and then you kind of like tweak and perfect, and it grows and it evolves as you move along. But like, just do it. Just like literally just start. Oh yeah, that's another goddess I've been thinking about recently. Nike, the goddess of victory. You know, just do it. Just do it like Nike.
Yes, I love that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Like I said, this is like vision board, like manifestation happening right now. It's just been such a treat.
So lovely meeting you.
It was so nice. Like when I got the email, you're like, oh, like let's do a podcast together. I was like, oh my God, this is happening.
It's happening.
It's all happening. So
Yes.
Thank you everyone for listening, and you can
you.
check out more of Ruby. All of the links are in the show notes below. And I'm just, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for bringing this information to, and using your platform to really help waken the masses in such a beautiful and graceful way. And I'm so grateful for people like you that are really here, dedicated and doing the Dharma to help people wake up and align to their highest self. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all of your work too. I can't wait to come to one of your ecstatic raves.
Oh, it's going to be so fun.
Yes.
We'll get super weird on the dance floor.
Perfect. My fave.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be seeing more of you soon. Take care.
Okay.
Satnam.
Bye.
Bye.